Welcome. This tutorial stems from a request from my dear friend Huang Fuang, who asked for me to show how I structure my custom PHP web projects that are capable of rendering thousands of dynamic rich content pages with blistering speed and efficiency. All of the code is ready to persist for a long time going forward. You'll see some object-oriented approaches, clever templating approaches, and when your system requires an update or whenever you want to perform design changes, the lightweight modular approach is so easy to manage. First, I'm going to start by showing you some of the benefits that you can potentially enjoy from having complete control over your code base. The first thing we'll do is run a Lighthouse audit. So open Chrome browser, navigate to your website, and then hit the little three-dot menu there, or you can just press Control-Shift-I. That'll open the developer tools, and if you happen to have console or elements tab selected first, go here to the double arrow and you'll see Lighthouse. Then click Analyze Page Load. Let's do it for desktop. So we have some nice scores for performance, accessibility, best practices, and SEO. And if you happen to run it on your website, let us know what your numbers are in the comments. So the speed and performance of this system is very high. And you can see on my homepage that I have lots of images. It's not just a bunch of text, and there's lots of images on my homepage. And here's another benefit. I have a check document markup for all of my pages because I like to keep aware if there's any little errors that pop up in the markup in the code. So I click that, and it's going to take us to the W3C validator. And document checking completed, no errors or warnings to show. And I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but that's pretty rare. Most every website you check is going to be riddled with errors all throughout the markup. And it's mostly because people just don't care and it's not important to them. And it might even help with the way the page is ranked and the way that it scores to have error-free code in the HTML markup. No errors, no warnings. So I'm going to take you through step by step on how something like this is created. Now I built this custom PHP architecture for my site and for a lot of my client websites, and not only just for websites, for a lot of different web applications and web-driven software. And it's intentionally built the way it's built for the resulting products to have greater speed, greater efficiency, greater simplicity, and it's the fastest way to get code running. It stands in stark contrast to the heavy, bloated bootstrap overhead of an MVC or MVP. MVC being Model View Controller, MVP being Model View Presenter. So whether you use a third-party code base that's powered by code that you don't understand, or create your own MVC or MVP from scratch, this is something that stands in stark contrast to that. The complexity, the heaviness, and the bloat of those kind of systems, this kind of system is in stark contrast of that. And each has their place. I'm not saying people should never use an MVC or MVP architecture because they have their place where needed. And that'd be up for the developer to decide when that's needed. So here's the rendering of the index page of the files that you're going to get. And all the files, all the code for the files will be available at my website. And I'm going to link in the description of this video to the code and the files that you can just copy and take for your testing purposes. And it'll be something like a bare bones thing that you can build onto. So what we have here, let me show you the code. It's just a static home page. And look at the tiny amount of code that renders that, because there's not much going on in the home page. In the main section we have the content section, we have the main element, And you can see I don't have much in there. And this is where you would put all of your content on your home page. But we're going to be dissecting this file and templating it out. That way it becomes modular and reusable. Now my website at adamkhoury.com, it uses just a few files to render. It could render up to millions of pages if I had that kind of need and the kind of server and database for that. But as it stands right now, it renders many hundreds of pages because that's all I have for tutorials is in the hundreds. I don't have thousands of tutorials. And I also have a new articles section at the site. So I've been dusting off the cobwebs of my site and fixing it up a little bit. And here in the main menu you see articles. I now have an articles directory. And if you click to read an article, there's one document that renders dynamically all of the articles that I put there. So when I get up to hundreds or thousands of articles over time, the one file, one document renders all of them dynamically from database results. And the same goes for the videos. So in the videos index here, you click any of these sections. By the way, I have a new section called AI, which I'm going to be adding some videos to very soon after this one. But if you click the JavaScript section, you can see the JavaScript has 159, the PHP has 117 video tutorials, CSS, HTML, SQL, and graphics. So if you click one of those video index pages to show you all of the JavaScript videos, each one of these videos renders on the same document. So you see this document here renders all of the different video tutorials. Now this thing here we're going to set up to be the same kind of way, and what we're going to do is dissect certain parts of this document to become templates that'll be reusable. So even if you had a file, for instance, if you click search, this file, or actually a better example would be the about. So the about page, this has no database, it has no need to access the database. I actually just have an about file that has all of the information here is hard coded into the file. It's not a dynamic page. So in this kind of system, you can have a mix of hard-coded pages or dynamic pages, whatever you choose. It's a lot of flexibility in the system I'm going to show you. Okay, so let's take a look at the code real quick. We have a link to a style sheet and a link to a JavaScript file. And these are both the core files. So these would be the main CSS style sheet for your website and the main JavaScript file for your website. You can see here in the folder structure, we're in a public HTML folder. We have a folder called CSS and another called JS. That's where the JavaScript file lives, and CSS is where the core.css file lives. So there's nothing dynamic going on right now. We're going to turn it into something a little more dynamic, modular, and reusable. And let me show you the core.css. So here's the CSS file that's styling that home page. And like I said, you can get all this code from my website. It'll be linked in the description of this video. Here's the JavaScript file, and it's just bare bones for now. So I'll go ahead and close those because we're not going to be working on those at the moment. So what I'm going to do is make 3 templates out of this file. I'm going to actually start right here. That code that you see highlighted, that's going to be taken out and made into a template. And I want to leave the closing head element just in case I want to have any special unique meta tags or any kind of code that I want to be special and unique for the home page can still go in the home page right here, because I'm going to leave the closing head tag there. So in order to make the dynamics work, we have to turn this into a PHP file. but we're going to keep the HTML file as well. So let's go to File, Save As. I'm going to name it index.php. That won't overwrite my HTML file. My HTML file is still there. I'm going to keep that HTML file for making design changes on my local computer. If you don't have a PHP environment or Apache environment set up on your local machine, you'll have to do your PHP file testing up on your live web server, your hosting environment. Okay, so now I have index.php open. I'm going to take this code, press Ctrl-C, and copy it, or just cut it. Ctrl-X. Then I'm going to say File, New File. And what we'll do is put it into a folder. Let's just create a new folder here. New folder. I'm going to name it Server. You can name this whatever you want. Press Enter. Now I have a folder in my public HTML. Along with the CSS and JS folder, I have a server folder. That's where I want to save this new untitled file. So let's press Ctrl-S to save it. Go into the server folder. And here we're going to make another folder called Templates. Inside of Templates, we're going to name the file for the code we just snatched out of that home page. We're going to name it doctype.php. Save. And since HTML can render inside of PHP files, there it is. So now we have the doctype all the way down to our core script as a template that we can then include into index.php here. So we open up a PHP tag, question mark PHP, and go down a couple of lines, and it closes off with a question mark and the closing bracket. Let's give ourselves a couple more lines of space there. And here we're going to, you can use include once or require once. Now let's go ahead and create another file, new file. We're going to save this one into the server folder, but not in the templates folder, just in the server folder. We're going to name this one config.php. So if we take a look at the file structure, we have server folder, has a templates folder where doctype lives, and then in that same server directory we have config.php. Now inside of config.php you want to have some initial code that looks like this. You'll have your base URL, and these are all variables that we can use inside of the main files. So you put your base URL for your website, the path to your core CSS, the path to your core JavaScript, and the path to the three templates that we're going to have in place for that homepage file. The doctype PHP, the doctop.php, and the docbottom.php. And I'll be creating those other two that haven't been created yet in just a second. So we press Ctrl-S to save that. And you can put any number of configuration variables that you need here. And this can also be a .env file if you'd rather set up. Well, there's really nothing secret in here, so I'm not worried about it. But if you had sensitive data within your configuration file, you might want to consider creating a .env file and setting up your configurations that way, because it just adds a little layer of security to the system. Now let's go back to index.php, and up in the PHP block that we have up top, the very tippy top, we're going to put error reporting. And actually I'm going to add one more line to that, and let's make those active. They're commented out. Now the reason why we're going to do that is because during development you want to have errors that you might have in your PHP show up onto the page while you're programming everything. But then once everything is finished and you see you have no errors in your system, comment those back out. You don't want to have those errors rendering to the pages when visitors and users are using your system. But it's just handy to have that during development So you're not confused about why things might not be working. If you make any mistakes, the errors and warnings will show up on the page. Now under that, we're going to require once the server config.php. In the server folder, config.php. And you can also lead to absolute paths with a / right before the server folder, just to make sure all the files connect no matter where this file might be. Now we're going to require once or include once, whichever you prefer. And require once is just like include once, but it makes it to where the file has to be there and found and inserted into this document, or else this document won't run. If you use include once, the document will still process and run and show, but it'll be missing parts of it. Now all we're doing here is requiring this variable name, and that's inside of config. So we just required config. So basically all the code from config, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all 6 of those lines essentially are living right here in this document at line 7. So we have access to the doc type variable right there, because all of those lines are included into the index.php already. So the doc type variable we have access to, and just we require once that file. So that means everything that's in doctype.php is basically, essentially, all this code is now living right here on this line where it was before the closing head tag right here. So we're just dynamically including that template, this templated code right here. We're also going to make these dynamic. You see how we have the name core.css and core.js? That's in config as well, right here. So that's going to be laid in, that variable is going to be laid in dynamically into doctype.php. Okay, so inside of doctype.php, right here where it says css /core.css, we're going to echo, PHP echo the CSS core variable. So basically what that does is it takes the string from config right here and it echoes it right there. So we'll do the same for the JS core right there, and we'll just say JS core. And since this file or this template is going to be needed for more than just the home page, this title also has to be dynamic, because you can't have duplicate titles for different pages of your site, because that would be a no-no for your SEO, your search engine optimization. So let's put an echo right there as well. We're going to echo, instead of CSS core, let's just name that something like doc title, short for document title. And we don't have that variable data created yet, so let's go ahead and create it right now. Let's take the static title out, the hard-coded title out, Control X. Let's go back into index.php, and right before the doc type require once, we're going to put that variable in place. Doc title is equal to, in between single or double quotes, we pop in the unique title for the home page. So now when another page goes to use that template, we'll have a different doc title here. You can also add a doc description in the same way. If you want to add a meta description tag, you can add it dynamically the same way we just did the title. The data for the description can go right here. So next to doc title, you can have doc description. And then those variables will be ready and in place before doc type gets included. doctype being all of this code. That way these variables connect. Now if you ever need to change anything in here, like the doctype declaration, the lang attribute, or anything like that, it will be site-wide, because all of the documents on your website will have this template included. So it makes maintaining and managing the site a whole lot easier when it comes to making changes. Okay, so back in the config file, we just need two more things. We need doc top and doc bottom. So let's go to doctype, and we're going to File, Save As. In the same folder, the templates folder, I'm going to save this as doctop.php. Save, and then clear out all that code. I'm also going to File, Save As, docbtm for bottom.php. Save. Now let's go into the templates folder. Make sure we have both of those open, doctop and docbottom. So here's docbottom, here's doctop, both empty right now. We go back into index.php. We're going to template out all of the, let's take a look at it. Basically everything that's not the main content of the page is going to be templated out. So the whole mast, the whole header, the whole top bar rather. So right here, we'll leave body right there, but we're going to take all of this, because every document has to have a body element, so you might as well just leave it there. But these are things that you might want to change design wise and structure wise later. So everything up into the main, we might even take main as well, and you could take all the way up to the container. Yeah, let's do that. Control X, go into doctop.php, Control V to paste it, Control S to save it. Then we go back into index. We'll just copy this one right here, Control C, and right here we're going to insert, and this needs to be wrapped in a PHP code block. PHP require once doc top, TOP, semicolon, close PHP block. There you go. Now let's just take that. Well, actually, let's go and get the footer out first. So let's take the closing main and the closing div for the container, because in doctop we have container and main. So we're going to pull those out as well to be the footer, the doc bottom. So we go in and we take all the way from here to the closing body and closing HTML. We'll leave those in place. Control X, go to doc bottom, Control V to paste, Control S to save. And you can always use PHP to echo the year date. That way when 2026 comes, or 2027, or 2050, it will always say the current year in your footer date. So now all we have to do to complete this templated setup, let's just copy that and paste it right here, and just put doc btm. Control save or Control S, and that's that. Now remember, if you want a doc description, you just put that here, that variable here, with the value that you want right there. And then in your doc type file, you would just add your meta description tag there, and then lay the variable in the same way we did for the value of the title. And for any other meta information that you want, you can have it all in index.php right here before the required doctype file gets inserted. So let's just take a quick look and see if we have everything set up right. We have error reporting on. We have require once for the config.php, and in config you can also put absolute paths here for all of these, and that might help all of your files connect, no matter, because this file index is always going to be in public HTML in the root folder. But you might have a file that is dynamic that might have a different path set up. For instance, it might be in a different directory, or it might seem to be in a different directory depending on your htaccess rewrite rules. For instance, on my site, everything's in the root directory, but I have htaccess rewrite rules that make it seem like I have many different directories that aren't really even there, but there's certain paths because I like to have the pretty URLs. I like to have the pretty and SEO friendly URLs instead of appending variables to the end of files. Like you could put question mark variable name V for video, video ID equals 79. I don't like having the URLs in the URL address bar look like that. So I do pretty friendly URL rewriting in my htaccess files for Apache servers. So basically I'm just saying all that because you want to have, if you're doing anything like that, you're going to want to have the you could also do it right here. If you wanted to, you could put your absolute paths here and it'll always connect to your JS file or your CSS file, but you don't want to double that up. Just make sure you do it in one spot. You can do it in the config and you'll be set. Let's see, did I do that somewhere else? Right here on the require for the config, but that should be fine. And actually, that doesn't even need to be there. We can run it just like that. So basically what this is doing is when you require your config file and your config is routed to these three, doctype, doctop, dot-bottom, all of the code inside of doctop, dot-bottom, and doctype is essentially right back where it was within your dynamic homepage. So on my website, when I want to make another section, I just create another file, and I might name that file video display.php, but nobody will ever bring up video display.php in the address bar. For instance, let me show you what I'm talking about. If I go to my site and I click on a video to watch, there's a video tutorial. Look at the address bar. It says /video/mastering. So it looks like there's a video folder. So it's a little bit misleading, but there is no video folder on my website. These are just URL rewrites. And the file that renders all of the different video tutorials for my site is just one master file. Now if you have a local PHP environment, you can test this right now. If you don't have a local PHP environment set up on your machine or your computer, all you have to do is put these files up to your hosting server and then test it there. Okay, now I have a working example project up on my server. So you can see adamkhoury.com, example project, folder inside the index.php and all those folders that go along with it. If I view page source, let's see if everything's right. We got the title in, that's good. And we have our doc top, doc bottom. Now what we're going to do soon is make this content dynamic on the home page. But let's go ahead and close doc top, doc bottom. We don't need that. Config, let's close it. Doc type, we'll close that. Now index.php can now be replicated. Let's file, save as. Let's make a static file called about. Or let's see what links I have. Contact. Let's make that a contact page. Contact.php. Save. Now this file, all I have to do is change the doc title. Say contact Adam to chat him up. And I'll change this to say contact Adam, and then put your contact form here. Now let's FTP that up to the server. Now let's see, we have to open in templates, we open doctop, because that's where the links are, right? Right here. Instead of that hashtag, we're going to put contact.php. Now, when we click that link, it'll navigate us to the contact page. So let's re-upload. Now, if I refresh, that one has a hashtag videos, hashtag articles. Now that says contact.php. There it is. Now we have contact page. That's working off the same templated system as the home page is. So in the next video, I'll be showing you how to create what we'll do is, here in the folder system, we're going to create another folder inside of the server folder. So you'll have templates, config, then we'll have another folder called class, and those will be for our object-oriented programming parts of the system. And the first object-oriented programming part will be the database object for connecting to a database. And I'll show you how I program my PDO. We'll use PDO class file, an object that will connect to the database of choice, which in my case will be MySQL. But you can use PDO to connect to 12 different types of databases, I think, not just MySQL. So changing from, if you migrate from one host to another and you're not using MySQL anymore, it's really easy to switch over your database connection object to a different type of database other than MySQL. Let's make sure our title is right. Yeah, contact Adam to chat him up. So we have the dynamic title going into the templated system nicely. And let me discuss some advantages you have now working with a system like this. You'll have, where is that? The doc top, doc bottom, doc type. Alright, so doc type, or your config file rather, if you ever make changes to your website, what happens is when somebody goes to your site, the JavaScript file and the external CSS file are going to cache in the user's browser. So if you make any design changes, let's say I want to make this top bar purple or green, and I want to make that design change inside of my CSS file, I FTP it up to the server. Anybody that has been to the site previously, they're not going to see those new changes. Now what's handy about this is you just make a new CSS file, let's call it core1.css, that contains the new change. Then you put that core1 in your CSS folder and you replace your config file on the server, and it'll always cache bust this way. So if you want to make sure all of your many users get to see your new design changes right away, or any changes you make that have to do with core JS or core CSS, you can cache bust them just by putting a new version number. So after core 1, maybe I run that for a month or two and I want to make another change and change the header bar to pink, then I just name it core2.css, and that'll cache bust for you. The same with the core.js file. And any changes you make to these doc type, doc top, doc bottom, those will automatically be updated, and there will be no caching involved with that, because on the page it basically that code resides here in the document. Just if you were to change this word to message Adam, that won't cache because it's actually in the file. So when you're requiring the doc type here, or right here rather, the doc top and the doc bottom, if I make any changes to that, there's no caching involved, so you don't have to version those at all. And remember, if you need absolute paths, you can put a / here, try / here, or in your config file you could / them here. If you happen to lose the linkage to either one of those files, you can set them as absolute paths. Depending on how your htaccess rewrite rules work, you might lose linkage to your relative paths to those files, so you can absolute them, and that will resolve the problem. It could also be forced in htaccess file to force those to be absolute paths, but it's cleaner and simpler to just do it here, or in config or doc type. You can do it right here or in config. Okay, so that wraps up part 1, and what we'll do in part 2 is I'll just create a demo database, and we'll set up the PDO class file, and we'll have a new folder in here. In the server folder, we'll put a new folder called class, and that's where we'll put all of our class files that are created for the object-oriented programming aspects of the system. And that way, in your index, if you wanted to show down here in the body of your index, in the content section, if you wanted to show dynamic database from your content, like your a listing of products, maybe you want to get a listing of products dynamically from the database, a listing of new t-shirts that you have listed or something, whatever the product may be. In my case, it's articles on my website and video tutorials. The latest video tutorials and the latest articles I dynamically pull out onto my home page automatically, and I just set it and forget it. That way, when I go into my content management system on the back end and I add a new article or add a new video, it's automatically brought to the home page for display without me having to do anything. So I would take my index.php and put a connection to the database somewhere here near the top. And I'll be showing you that, and I'll also show you how to create just a couple of more files. And in my case, I just need 2 more. One to render every article that I've ever written and every video tutorial that I've ever made. So it'll be what? I have a contact page, a home page, dynamic video page, and dynamic article page. Those 4 files will run all those hundreds of, it'll operate rendering all those hundreds of pages that need to come out of the database. So the way this is set up, if you ever want to make any changes to the design of the website, it's going to be a breeze, because all you have to do is open your index.html, which is the static version. You do your changes there, your design changes there on your local computer, make it look any way you want, add anything you want. If you need a new menu button, you add a new menu button, and then you just replace your doc top to make it reflect those changes. So you always have a static version of your design and your layout right next to your dynamic version. And that's not needed for the site, but it's good to have that so you can do design changes really quickly and then update your templated files. And then everything site-wide will be changed and updated. Okay, so if you want to continue down this path, I'm going to put up a video number 2 that will accompany this video here. Where this ends, we'll pick right up and keep going.